Thank you, guys. Always enjoy being here at Liberty. And I want to talk to you a little bit this morning about making dreams happen. You know, chances are every person in this room has a dream. You feel like God's called you to do something significant with your life. But the truth is, most of us struggle with making that dream happen. I live and work in Hollywood, and I see thousands of people streaming into that town every week with an incredible dream. But I've discovered something interesting, that most of the time dreams fail because of one big reason. People don't know how to communicate that dream to other people. They don't know how to share that message well. And boy, I'll tell you, it's true with Christians. We're telling the greatest story ever told, but very often we don't tell it very well. We have a good heart. We mean well. Have you heard that phrase here? I grew up in North Carolina, down in Charlotte. My mother had this phrase, "He's got a good heart." Well, that means he's a moron. And so every time, we mean well, we try our best, but we don't tell our message very well. In fact, I think that's one of the biggest reasons Christians are losing ground in the culture. We're being marginalized because we don't share our faith well with the culture. So every time I come to Liberty, I like to bring examples of people who are doing their best, but they don't quite get the message across. For instance, I don't know if you've seen this church sign before. Do you know what hell is? Come hear our preacher. The pastor may have had a great series about hell, but I don't think that's what that sign communicated. My wife and I were in the UK a couple years ago, and I discovered that if you cover up part of your message, it'll change the meaning. I found this barn. That's not good. And let me give you a tip. If you work at Vacation Bible School, be very careful where you put the sign. I drove by that place. I love that. That's great. And if you work at a pregnancy center, if you're doing great work, working in a pregnancy center, be careful about sharing your sign with a rental car company because you don't want to become the budget pregnancy center. We mean well, don't we? And by the way, college students, punctuation matters. I saw this church sign that was kind of interesting. You know, to come and worship Pastor Freddie Sin. I'm sure he's a great guy, and I don't think the Methodists realize the impact of abbreviating their name for their Bible camp so it would fit on a street sign, because this is the way it came out. The Meth Bible Camp. You know, as you get married and have children, just remember Phil Cooke said, "Do not send your kids to a meth Bible camp." They didn't. The dead end part is right. That's what that would be. But you know what? It happens everywhere. I was watching a Christian program. It was a worship show, a worship concert, and for some reason, I had the closed caption track on. And I thought, I wonder what hearing impaired think of this. Because I don't think that was the song they were singing. Probably shouldn't show that stuff in chapel, huh? Be careful with your spelling. But you know what? The secular world suffers too. My wife and I were in the UK recently, and we went by a theater, and I saw this sign, which I thought was kind of interesting. TV psychic medium. So wait a second. Why is it canceled due to unforeseen circumstances? And I don't care how much the price is lowered. I don't care how much it's a discount. I probably won't buy any porn and beans. Just don't buy porn and beans, all right? All right, enough of that. My favorite, we have a new Home Depot in Burbank in LA where I live, and I walked into Home Depot the other day and I saw this sign, "Ask an associate for a demonstration." No! Please don't demonstrate that. All right. Enough silliness for you guys. Let me tell you something. They interviewed, a guy asked Michelangelo, the great sculptor, how he carved such brilliant statues. He said something interesting. He said, "Really, I don't carve statues. I just remove the excess stone and let the angel that's inside come out." That's true of our lives. Very often we come to college to learn things. We go to seminars and classes and workshops to learn things, but along that path, we often pick up negative thinking, negative ideas, and occasionally we need to remove the excess stone so our dream that's inside of us can be realized. So I want to do something a little different this morning. Instead of learning something new, I want you to create a stop doing list. Get out a pencil, a paper, a pen, iPhone, iPad, whatever you take notes on, because I want to share 6 things that I want you to put on a stop doing list. I mean, that's kind of what Jesus did 2,000 years ago. The religious leaders of his day had built up so many unbelievable rules and regulations on the people of Israel. They were being crushed under the weight. And Jesus came, cleared it away, and reset our priorities. What really matters in your life? And I think in a similar way, if you can look at these 6 areas, stop doing them, it will start clearing a path for your dream to happen in your own life. Are you with me? Stop doing lists. Number 1, stop avoiding responsibility. In other words, man up. Read Romans chapter 5 about character and about facing difficult times. You know, I was at a Starbucks the other day in Hollywood, and a guy tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you're Phil Cooke, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I've read your books. I've heard you speak. I just wanted to introduce myself and say hi." And I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Well, I'm a film director." And I rolled my eyes because in LA, everybody's a film director. And I said, "Well, what have you actually directed?" And he named me 4 films, and they were terrific films. I knew them all. Suddenly I was impressed, and I said, "Well, that's fantastic. What are you working on now?" And he said, "Well, honestly, I'm managing an apartment complex." I thought, whoa, how do you go from a career directing films to managing an apartment complex? And he said, "Well, there's a number of things." And he started listing the things that had derailed his career. The studio didn't release his last film correctly. A screenwriter wrote a bad screenplay. Some of his actors didn't work out very well. The marketing was bad. His agent took advantage of him. And as he was listing these things, I noticed one thing. He never once said, "You know what the truth is, Phil? I messed up my last film. Or I directed it poorly. Or I picked a poor project. Or I could have done a better job." He never once took responsibility for his own career. At that moment, I realized this guy will be managing an apartment complex for the rest of his life. I want to tell you something. I don't care what situation you're in. Until you own it, you will never move out of it. Let me go further and say, I don't care whose fault it is. You may have been taken advantage of. You may have been abused. You may have been, who knows? I don't care whose fault it is. You have to own it, or you'll never get out of that situation. It's incredibly, incredibly important. And by the way, stop blaming God for your situation. Man up. I was at a conference the other day, and I went to see a friend of mine who was doing a workshop at that event. And he only had 4 people that showed up at his workshop. And he said, I know you've heard this. He said, "Well, that must be the 4 people God wanted to be here." I said, "No. Maybe you've done a lousy job marketing this workshop. Maybe you're a bad speaker. Maybe what you're talking about nobody wants to listen to, but we find it so much easier to blame God for us dropping the ball." So man up. Stop taking responsibility. Number 2, you'll love this. Stop multitasking. Stop multitasking. I know. College students do that for a living. Luke 10:41 says, "But the Lord answered her, 'Martha, Martha, you're anxious and troubled about many things, but only one thing is necessary.'" Let me tell you something. I write books about this stuff, and study after study after study indicates the only thing multitasking does is help you do a lot of things badly. The latest study I've read indicated that when you multitask, it lowers your IQ to the same level as if you were smoking pot. So just think about this. You're in your dorm room working on that paper for tomorrow, but you're also updating your Facebook page, you're Twittering, you're checking your email, you're watching TV, you're listening to music, and you're calling your buddies. Not only will that paper stink, everything you do will stink. Multitasking is terrible. Science tells us we are wired to focus. If God's called you to accomplish something significant in your life, focus, focus, focus. Makes a dramatic difference. And by the way, on a little side note, let me give you a secret. Embrace boredom. When I look back, we've done Super Bowl commercials, we've done TV specials, we've done international programming, and when I look back over my career, the best ideas I've ever had were ideas that came to me when I was bored out of my mind. But you know what? We carry a little anti-boredom device in our pocket now. Whenever you're standing in line at the doctor's office or waiting at the grocery store, we whip this out and check our email, send a text, play a video game. We never allow ourselves to be bored. Let me tell you something. If you wonder why your ideas aren't better, detach, disconnect, spend time being bored. It'll change your life. It'll change your life. Number 3, stop doing lists. Number 3, stop talking. Proverbs 10:19 says, whoever restrains his lips is prudent. You know, I travel a lot. I travel about 250,000 miles a year, and it's really difficult scheduling appointments with me. Some people will schedule appointments with me 3-4 months in advance because it's just hard making that connection. So I have people all the time, I find this fascinating, people all the time will schedule appointments with me, will schedule an hour, and they come in and they talk for a solid hour. I literally had a guy the other day came in, he'd waited 3 months for an appointment, wanted to talk about his career. He sat down and did not stop talking for 59 minutes. I don't think he took a breath. Finally, at 59 minutes, I physically interrupted him and said, hey, I don't know why you came here today because you could have stayed at home and talked for an hour to yourself. But now it's too late for me to give you any advice or ideas or suggestions. Nice to meet you. And I walked out of the room. I think what happens is we meet somebody that we respect or that is impressive or somebody that can help our career, and we feel like we have to tell him our story. We have to share everything with this guy. No, you don't. Remember that phrase about you learn more from listening than talking? That works in more areas than you can possibly imagine. You all know the person that when you have a meeting, that guy or gal, she dominates the whole meeting, talks all the time. And when somebody else tries to talk, they just get louder. Stop talking. I actually pitched a project to a producer in Hollywood a few years ago. I walked into his office and he was on the phone. He was yelling at a director he had just worked with. I mean, he was screaming at this guy. They had done a project together. The director had screwed up. It was a bad project. This producer lost money, and they were yelling. And finally, he slammed the phone down, turned to me, and started ranting. For 20 minutes, he just vented about this guy. Just vented. And I didn't agree with him. I didn't interrupt him. I just sat there and took it. After about 20 minutes, he said, man, I'm sorry. Thanks for letting me talk. You know what? I don't know what project you're pitching, but we'll do it. I literally did a television special without saying a word. Sometimes being quiet will do remarkable. All right, let me challenge you. See how far being quiet will take you. I think you'll be amazed. Number 4, stop complaining. Stop complaining. Philippians 2:14 says, do all things without grumbling. And yet, man, we get into a rut sometimes. And it's okay when you take your buddy to Starbucks and just vent about how bad a day it was. But very often we get into a lifestyle, a culture of complaining. Let me ask you this, admit it. How much time do you spend complaining about your problems to people who can't help you solve them? Wow, if we could funnel some of that time into actually fixing our problems, it would change things. I read an interesting study the other day that indicated that last year, 78% of the people that were fired in America weren't fired because they were incompetent, weren't fired because they were lazy or they didn't show up. 78% of the people that were fired last year were fired because of one reason. They couldn't get along with other people in the office. And you know what the number one issue was? They were complainers. They were complainers. Trust me, you may think people like to hear you vent. Nobody wants to be. I have a friend in LA that's so negative. When he walks into a room, it actually feels like somebody left. You could develop a culture of being a complainer, and nobody wants to be around that. Number 5, stop working randomly. When you study the battle plans of King David, he did something interesting. He scouted his battles out and attacked at specific times of day. He was very careful about when he took his troops into battle. And yet, college students are famous for doing something I admire, actually, and that's plugging work into whenever you have available time. You know, our 3 o'clock class canceled, so let's get together and work on that paper. Or maybe after my roommate goes to bed, I'll meet you in the lobby and we'll work on our presentation for tomorrow. Or maybe I could get up earlier, we'll meet at lunch and make those phone calls for the project we're working on. That's great, I admire it. But that disregards 2 important things that will transform your career. One is, what time of day do you do your best work? And where do you do your best work? Science tells us that we're all wired in cycles. Some of us are morning people, some of us are afternoon people, some are evening people, you know, the rock star hour people. I learned early in my career that I'm a morning person. From 6 a.m. to noon, I can write like a crazy person. I can come up with ideas, but afternoon, I'm worthless. I can talk, I can make phone calls, I can meet, I can travel, I can speak, but when it comes to creative ideas, I'm a morning person. When you tap into that, it will start to transform the quality of the work you do. Now, obviously we can't control our schedules all the time. You're taking classes when they're available, but you know what? You can start getting intentional about shifting your schedule toward when you're most productive. When I wrote my first 2 books, I had an 8 to 5 job, but I knew I was a morning person, so I came in at 6 a.m. in the morning, 2 hours early, and I wrote 2 books coming in 2 hours early with no phones, no interruptions, no people. You can do the same thing. The second thing is, where are you most productive? I'm not exactly ADD. You know the definition of ADD. What is the definition of ADD? Attention deficit. That's a nice shirt you're wearing, by the way. I don't necessarily have ADD, but I have a very high distraction factor, so I have to create in a bank vault. My office has 5 windows. 4 are translucent. They let light in. I can't see out. The 4th has shutters the size of 2x4s. I have to be in a place where I'm not distracted. If you're that way and you're trying to work in the lobby of your dorm, forget it. If you're trying to work at a Starbucks and you're that way, forget it. Start to shape your day around when you do your best work and where you do your best work, and it'll transform what you do. And by the way, let me give you a little tip. When you go home today, when you go back to the dorm or your apartment or wherever, take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. And on the left side of the paper, I want you to list the top 5 things you want to accomplish in the next 5 years. You want to graduate from college, you want to launch a company, you want to pastor a church, you want to make a movie, you want to write a book. Whatever those 5 most important things in the next 5 years you feel like you want to accomplish. And then on the right side of the paper, you list the top 5 things you spend most of your time doing every day. Chances are they will not line up. If you want to really move forward in your career, start doing something every single day toward those 5 things on the left side of the page. And the last thing I would tell you is this: stop ignoring your story. Stop ignoring your story. If you don't listen to anything else I say today, let me tell you this: understand the power of your story. Maybe it's because I'm a filmmaker, maybe it's because I'm a writer, but let me tell you something. The greatest asset you have is your story. Who you are matters. Your past matters. Your family matters. Your personality matters. Where you come from matters. Your background matters. All those things matter. And yet, you know what? People all over the country every day go to work, sell products, write books, pastor churches, lead companies without ever connecting who they are with what they do. Study the great artists of all time, the great creative people of all time, and you learn pretty quickly that Flannery O'Connor wrote out of her past. She wrote out of her community. She wrote out of who she was. Ernest Hemingway would go on incredible journeys deep into the heart of Africa, and he learned pretty quickly that you've got to jettison everything but what's incredibly important. You've got to pare down to the essential things you need for survival. I've been to many of the places he went into the bush, and it's true. You can only take what you absolutely have to survive. And he started injecting that into his writing. He got rid of all the extra storytelling stuff, the fluff, the descriptions, and he got down to what was absolutely the most important part of telling a compelling story. It didn't just change his writing, it changed literature. When you learn to inject who you are into what you do, trust me, I don't care what you become. If you're an executive, a politician, a lawyer, a teacher, a professor, filmmaker, whatever you want to become, there's a lot of competition out there. You know, you're celebrating the communication school. I can tell you this, in Hollywood, 27,000 film school graduates descend on Hollywood every year. 27,000 every single year. So what makes you different? What makes you stand out? Who you are is what makes you unique. That makes you different from everybody else out there. And until you realize that, you're never going to go to the next level. It's interesting, a friend of mine, a producer, got a script for a short film from a young filmmaker recently, and it was an interesting story. It was well written. It was about an angel who made a mistake. And to penalize him, God knocked him down a notch and made him human. He demoted him. He took him from being immortal to mortal. And my friend looked at the script and said, you know what, it's extremely well written, but it's not true. He said, it's not good theology. The truth is, angels look at human beings and long to know what it's like to be us. 1 Peter says, Even angels long to look into these things. I love the Message version. It says, do you realize how fortunate you are? Angels would give anything to be in on this, what it's like to be human. If an angel became a human, it wouldn't be a demotion, it would be a promotion. Because we're the ones that are made in God's image. We share his DNA. It's amazing. In fact, God values your story so much, he allowed his son to die to repair the breach that would bring that story back. He adores your story. Your story matters to God, and yet, in so many cases, it doesn't matter to us. We go through our lives never thinking about who we are and what makes us unique could help us achieve our dream. 6 things I want you to remember. Number 1, stop avoiding responsibility. Start manning up. Number 2, stop multitasking. Start focusing on that one big thing at a time. Number 3, stop talking and start listening. Number 4, stop complaining and start fixing things. Number 5, start working randomly. Start being strategic about what you do, when you do it, and where you do it. And number 6, stop ignoring your story and become what God created you to be. I'll tell you this. If you can tap into who you are, it will forever transform what you do. Thank you very much.
By the way, every single talk I've ever heard Phil Cooke do, every book he's written is filled with that type of practical advice. And the bookstore has his books available on the floor today. Just down here, there are more in the bookstore. His other books are available there. So God bless you. Have a great day.